Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I'm Hamza Idris. As Nigeria moves to ease the burden of multiple taxation that is undermining domestic business drive and slows down the productive sectors, key players in the nation's economy have picked holes in the existing lapses in getting the fundamentals right. While the Tinubu government announces the exemption of small business earning 25 million and below, manufacturers and farmers from withholding tax, foremost industrialist and richest man in Africa, Aliko Dangote, has decried 30% interest rate regime by the CBN as inimical to manufacturing, job creation, and economic growth. Dangote, while speaking at a 3-day summit by the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria in Abuja, also advocates the need to protect domestic industries as an inescapable route to sustainable and inclusive economic growth and human development. The postulations are coming on the heels of concerns by some Nigerians that the Tinubu government has lost grip on the sliding economy despite reforms it initiated to halt the nosediving indices and restore confidence in the system. It is against this backdrop we will be engaging with a UK-based economist and researcher, Dr. Zuhumnan Dapel, who had worked with a number of international institutions on issues relating to finance, governance, among others. He joins us via Zoom to look at the nation's worsening economic situation, the fortunes of the Naira, which once prides itself as the strongest in Africa, and what is the best way out. Dr. Zuhumnan, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us.
Pleased to be with you, Hamza.
Thank you. How is UK?
Fine, thanks.
Fine. But before the conversation, here are some tidbits. Nigerians spent 16.5 trillion in 2023 on buying diesel, petrol and generators for their own electricity generation, according to the federal government. This dwarfs the 1 trillion naira revenue earned by the formal power sector in the same year. Adebayo Adelabu, the Minister of Power, revealed this information at the ongoing 2024 Nigeria Oil and Gas Conference on Tuesday. And elsewhere, Vice President Kashim Shettima has called for the prioritization of local content and promotion of made-in-Nigeria products, citing that Executive Order 003, which makes the patronage of locally manufactured products mandatory, is still in effect. Shettima also says the federal government has partnered with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria to devise an actionable roadmap and policy framework that will refurbish the nation's manufacturing sector. He affirmed that the roadmap and policy framework will be speedily implemented to effect the needed changes that will revamp the sector. The Vice President, who declared upon the 3-day National Manufacturing Policy Summit at the State House Banquet Hall, regretted that the sector had endured a series of setbacks over the past decades. We'll now take a short break, and when we return, our conversation commences. Stay with us. Of course, we have our guests, Dr. Zuhumnan Dapel from the United Kingdom. Doctor, you've seen our first tidbit. Nigerians spend 16.5 trillion to power their generators at home, to buy generating sets, as opposed to 1 trillion naira revenue earned by the formal power sector, meaning we are talking about the discos, gencos, and all that. What is the percentage? Could it be 1,500 percentage difference in what Nigerians spend out of their pockets to generate power?
Well, the numbers are there. They may not be as perfect as they should be, but they are very much close to the reality. So 59% of businesses generate 60% of the electricity they need, and they spend over 13 billion naira every year on powering their generator by buying alternative source of energy other than from the national grid. So that's a very big disadvantage because it's going to the average cost of production, and that would feed into general price levels. So there was inflation around the world, and much of that inflation from America and United Kingdom, and that of the United Kingdom, they put the blame on rising energy prices. So rising energy prices was a big contributor to overall inflation. And so manufacturers, producers having to pay for their energy from expensive sources that are 3 times what you get from the national grid, it's hurting businesses.
Where is the problem? Maybe can you make a comparison? Is energy really a factor to reckon with? I mean, as far as problem is concerned in the United Kingdom and adjoining countries.
I'm always very slow comparing a country that has been centuries in the making to a country that is less than a century in the making. UK has been in existence for hundreds of years as a country, so they have come through. I would have loved to compare UK when it was 56 years old with Nigeria, that is now, like UK when it was 63 years old to Nigeria is now. But we aspire to follow these countries to learn from their mistakes so we can shape our own political and economic paths. Now, energy is a major factor of production in all businesses. Even the media houses you're running, you need energy. There is virtually no business that doesn't rely on energy. So if energy prices go up, the cost of production would go up, and depending on how essential that commodity that you produce is, it's going to determine whether you push the entire burden of the rising energy price on consumers or you share it. Now, in the UK, they were able to battle inflation seriously within 144 months from 2-digit level to single-digit level. Their target was to keep it as 2%, but it was 11%, and they fought it down. And they did 2 things. One was they regulated downwards energy prices. There is what they call energy price caps. So energy suppliers cannot charge above a certain price when it comes to fixing energy prices. And secondly, they raise interest rates. So they combine 2 major tools to fight down inflation. So energy is indispensable. You need it every day, especially for industries, not just for lighting our houses and charging our phones, watching movies, or ironing our clothes, but it's a major factor of production in industries.
Do they have what we call here bands, band A, band B, band C, band E, that they've got nearly 0?
Bands in terms of, is it energy efficiency? Or
yes, that energy supply. Because here in Nigeria, doctor, there are, in Abuja, for instance, there are some who are on band D, meaning they get maybe 4 hours or thereabout. I may be wrong, but they get as low as you can imagine. And then there are some who are on band A, meaning they can get from 20 hours up to maybe 23 in a day. But so segmented the society.
The energy problem in Nigeria is very big, and I don't think it's something we can just analyze this on the TV. You need the experts to dig in much further, but there are 3 outstanding facts: that we don't generate enough capacity to meet our demand. And even the capacity we're able to generate, the installed capacity of energy in Nigeria is far, far, far less than what the population needs. And secondly, transmission capacity is not strong enough to transmit what is being generated. And the distribution capacity also is not strong enough to distribute what is being transmitted. So from generation, transmission to distribution, significant amount of energy is lost in the process. And what gets to the final consumer, it's a big difference from what was generated. That's even if we assume that the generation it's equal to what we need. So there's a big problem, and it's an infrastructure problem, right? So the infrastructure problem, of course, you say once you invest, the infrastructure is going to solve the problem. We need like $10 billion every year for 10 years in a row to close our energy gap. And no matter how much money we infuse, if corruption is not quashed, it would always gulp that money.
All right, let's move to the second tidbit briefly. The Vice President saying that we must have an actionable roadmap and policy framework that will, ensure that we patronize home products. Maybe the candle we use.
Yes.
The market, I don't want to go to vehicles and all that. Yes. Is it possible?
Yeah. So first of all, I've never seen a politician in my life that will approach the people and say, let us chart a path to destroy our economy. No politician talks like that. All their views sound always brilliant, but that's not enough. We want to see the action in place. Now, I'm not a fan of the idea that you invoke orders to compel people to buy Nigerian commodities. That's not the best way to incentivize people using federal might. First of all, you should understand that welfare, the overriding goal of development policy is to improve the welfare of the people. So if you compel them to spend a lot of money on what the quality is not great to give them the welfare they need, you are being counterproductive. So first is to incentivize them. And for instance, let's give an example that Nigerian government is able to secure, maybe using some researchers, experts, and they secure a more efficient way of producing rice in Nigeria, such that the quality of the rice is superior or equal to the quality of any rice ever imported in the country. Now, if that happens and we sell our rice for, say, 7,000 naira for a bag in the market, and people still make profit selling it at that, even if you open the border and remove tariffs on rice, that the landing prices are 10,000 or 20,000, nobody is going to buy those for the rice. They will rush for the local rice. So some countries, the closest to being invoking executive powers is they raise tariffs on foreign goods. And when they raise tariffs on foreign goods, they make those foreign goods more expensive, and the substitute for these foreign goods will be patronized within. Now, liberalizing our exchange rates and thereby raising the price of the dollar, it's another way of saying the tariff, or the government has raised tariff because it becomes more expensive for you to buy foreign education. And so you say, okay, instead of sending my kids abroad, I would send them to private universities in Nigeria, and I will still have a lot of extra money left. So there are different ways that government can incentivize people rather than invoking executive powers that may be counterproductive. But I understand the intention, and it's a good intention to patronize local goods.
Okay, we'll discuss more on this, but now going to the topic of the day, which was triggered by the statement by the richest man in Africa, Aliko Dangote, that taxing people, taxing them and taxing them again will not, grow the economy on one hand. And then now interest rates in the banks, if it is very high, you are stifling production. What is your take on this?
So tax, another way to understand tax is you have money and the government say, instead of you spending the money, we'll take part of it and spend it on your behalf, whether you like it or not. That's one way to look at tax. So the question to ask yourself is, who is the best spender of your own money, you or the government? But there are certain things left to you alone, the country is not going to have. So we've never seen individuals providing national security for the country, providing police force, funding construction of roads and bridges, major federal hospitals. All these things, the government has to fund them. And one way for the government to do that is to raise, instead of printing more money, raise money through tax, the amount of money that's already in circulation. Because it is believed that theoretically everybody should benefit from tax. You get the lights, you get the police protection, that's in theory, and you get the law courts and the institutions functioning for you. They are tax-funded institutions. But I understand that in Nigeria, roughly is 10% of the population that pay tax, because there is a default symbiotic relationship between the government and the people. There is oil money, so we don't care about collecting tax. And when the people don't pay tax, they don't hold the government to account on what the government does with money. So there are big arguments that when you lower taxes, you release more money into the hands of people. And if these people, most of them are investors, they will invest back this money into the system and it will create more jobs. That's one theory. So tax cuts for growth. And during the Reagan era in America, he came with that idea when he took over a falling economy from Jimmy Carter. He was told by pessimists that the engine of economic growth is shut down and that there is nothing that can be done. But he cut taxes, and before you know it, the system responded with economic progress. So that's different. But when you cut taxes, when you cut taxes, you put more money in the hands of people. I think it makes sense in a situation where people use the tax money to finance corruption rather than spending it on the economic system or infrastructure. So if they give tax cut to them and they invest back this money in the system and they create job, that's fine. It's better than corruption eating the money. So you let the people have their monies in their own pockets. Okay. And then the second issue on interest rates. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, why do you think Dangote is complaining about the borrowing rate? You know, he said the higher.
Well, of course, he's a business person and he has to complain. So interest rate is the price you pay for money. It's just like go to the market. There is a price for every commodity. So money is also a commodity and there is a price for it, and the price is interest rates. So if you raise the interest rates, you are making money more expensive. You are reducing how much is available for lenders to lend and how much is available for borrowers to borrow. That's what it means. And also, when you raise interest rates, you are encouraging people who have money to not spend their money, but to save it to get more returns on these monies. So that's what the raising of the interest rate is about. So he would complain if he is a frequent borrower from the government because it's going to eat into his own profit. And there are a lot of conversation around and deep arguments around that. Interest rate normally is raised to combat inflation because you believe that there is so much money in circulation. So when you raise interest rates, it reduces how much money moves around. And if there is few money chasing few goods, prices would go down instead of too much money chasing few goods. But the kind of inflation we face in developing countries, especially like Nigeria, it's a headline inflation, which includes food prices and energy prices that are very, very unstable over time. And so the central bank is to target these inflations that are not monetary, that they don't have monetary phenomenon in them, rather than core inflation that excludes these food and energy inflation. So most of this inflation, you cannot battle them with rising interest rates. It's not going to work. You need something else to complement that.
Somebody, a local person, will find it very difficult to strike a balance now, especially what you said. Now, many people are crying in Nigeria. They don't have money. But government, especially the CBN, is saying too much money in circulation. And they are raising the, lending or borrowing rate. Where are we getting it wrong? Because people don't have money. People can't even eat as we speak. Then where is the money?
So that's why I'm trying to explain. So that's the point I'm trying to make. So the inflation we're facing is driven by rising food prices and rising energy prices. We've removed subsidies, so pump prices have gone on and businesses rely on petrol. You cannot fight this type of inflation by raising interest rates. You fight this inflation by regulating the prices downward, just like the UK regulated prices downwards.
So there's energy prices. Complaint is legitimate, right?
Yeah, so when subsidy was in place, that's another way of regulating prices downwards. So, but this one, food prices have gone up. And the next thing is to find out what is pushing up food prices. Is it the shortage of supply of food prices? Then what can we do to raise production to match the demand? So it's not really that it's money that is chasing few agricultural goods and then the prices are going up. There are some factors that are underlying factors that are pushing up the food prices. So unless these factors are addressed, now you can see since Nigeria switched from single to double-digit inflation, they have been raising interest rates and inflation rate has been rising the same time, the same direction with interest rate. So if it was supposed to be the case that is working, the more interest rate you raise, you are going to see inflation rate going down. But this time around, we're not seeing, which means there is a very, very powerful weak link, if I would say so.
Why is our Naira every day getting weaker and weaker?
I will not shy away from this. Many people have their own views, but my own views are there are two factors. And these two factors, they have been the collapse, the collapse of the Naira, the build-up has been many, many years in the making. It was just looking for an opportunity for two factors to be the last straw that struck the camel's back. And the two things that struck the camel's back was the liberalization of the currency in June 2016 and in June 2023. And the second was the removal of subsidy. So these are the final strokes that collapsed the currency. But as for the value of the currency, the foundation, the seed for its collapse is like some years in the making. So during the Abacha era, we had exchange rate that is stable for like 5 years in a row. It was 22 naira roughly to the dollar, and it never changed. At the same time, Nigerian poverty rate was the highest to date, over 80% in 1996. But immediately democracy returned, the size of government expanded, which means there are National Assembly members, senators, House of Rep members, State House of Assembly members, governors, ministers, their aides. You have government payroll has expanded. How much government spend has expanded. So there is massive infusion of cash post-military into the system. So when people have these monies, and there's political revival, politics, campaigning, opening the national treasury for politicians with the help of bureaucrats who have unfettered access to national finance, to public finance, and then we start seeing politicians buying houses abroad in a scale not seen during the military regimes. They are owning mansions, millions of dollars, millions of pounds. So these monies that are leaving the shores of our country to other countries, they are already preparing the ground to weaken the Naira. And that has been going on and going on. And then in 2011, there was election result that did not favor one of the candidates on the ballot. And that led to violence when the result was announced. That violence sent a strong message to investors. And close to 2015 election, there were repetition of this rhythm that if this continues the way things were in 2011, and if this same candidate is not declared a winner, there will be bloodbath that will shatter not just businesses but the lives of people. So 2 weeks to the election, roughly, there was tens of billions of dollars withdrawn out of Nigeria by a lot of businesses in form of capital flight. And then when that government came into power, the government activated capital control measures. You cannot use ATM to withdraw money, and people have to go to black markets. They go to black markets, the sale is scarce there. And I tell you what, I always say this, in the black market, when the central bank is not independent, some people will get the dollar from the central bank through the through the back door to the black market. And since the black market operate under the cloak of darkness, you will have a politician who would steal 1 billion naira cash and he'll just convert it to dollar and take it to his house. Now, if you go to Bureau de Change and ask those who sell the dollars, they will not profile for you the record of who buys what and how much and where they live, because it operates under the cloak of darkness. But in more stable and strong financial systems, even if you need to exchange $5 in the UK to use it for some things in the US, you have to provide your ID card, your address, and your full names before you be exchanged the dollar. So they know your source of income and everything like that. So when these things happen, they were creating the ground. And then the final bullet against the Naira were the subsidy removal and the liberalization in June 2016.
Okay.
2023. Right?
Are there some parameters that we can measure the impacts of this deteriorating position of the Naira on the citizens, for instance?
Yeah, so, I mean, everywhere in the world, inflation reduces the value of money. But the extent to which it reduces matters. It's almost unthinkable that a country like Nigeria that prides itself on three big things, the biggest economy in Africa, the biggest oil producer in Africa, the largest population in Africa, is having inflation rate of over 30%. It's unthinkable. Now, food inflation is what is driving the overall inflation. And the poor, those who live on certain amount of income per day, very low, they spend 70 to 80%, if not some 90% of their income on food. So when food prices go up, you have deepened the level of their food poverty or food deprivation. So that really hits. So transportation moves foods across. In the north, food is cheaper than in the south. And you ask yourself, if somebody in the south buys a bag of beans, would the price that person in the south pay for the bag of beans that was produced in the north equal to the price, equal to the income of the seller of that beans in the north? The answer is no, it's far less. The farmer gets less from the market, and one of the reasons is the cost of transporting the food across the country, which has now gone up because the cost of fuel has gone up. I remember one time, Secretary to the Government of Federation, he was lamenting that he is unable to get enough diesel to continue his farm operations. It costs him a lot to continue his farm operation, and it costs him a lot to buy diesel, hire tractors to move things.
Yeah,
he's going to put the prices on the food items.
The former SGF, right?
Yes, the former SGF.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to ask is, we are debating minimum wage in Nigeria now. Government is trying to pay 60,000 thereabout. Labor is asking for 50,000. What do you think will be the middle ground between government and the labor? Going by
So,
what they are taking home. Yes.
to me, the middle ground should be to isolate the impact of inflation on their income. And that happens in major world economies. Every year, we raise, if inflation rate is 4% in January of that year, we're going to raise your income by 4%. So when last was income raised for workers to 30,000? If it was raised in 2010, then look at the inflation rate in 2010 versus the inflation rate in 2024. Then you will be able to know how much inflation has eaten away the nominal value of the money. And then that amount of money wiped by inflation, the purchasing power, just replenish it there. So for instance, Nigerian professors on average, if you convert what they earn a month in dollars in 2009, that was the last time they raised their salaries, they were earning roughly $2,000. Now, if you adjust for inflation and exchange rate, they are now earning $35 a month, which is roughly like 2 or 3 times the nominal minimum wage in America per hour.
The professors were earning around $2,000.
Yeah, in 2009, but now they're earning $35 a month based on calculation I ran by adjusting their income, taking into account how inflation has changed from 2009 to now, and how exchange rate has also changed from 2009. So the inflation has lowered the monthly salary of a Nigerian professor from over 400,000 a month to 49,000 a month.
49,000
so,
as we speak now.
Yeah, that's the real income. Real income. So what that means is, if he has his salary now in 2024, he cannot use that salary to buy what he was buying in 2009. To be able to do that, you need to return to the income what the inflation has taken away. And the inflation, what has it taken away? It has taken over 300,000. So if, say, every year you were raising the income of the professors or income of workers, say if inflation rate from January 2010 is 4%, then you raise their income by 4%. If you go to January 2011, if inflation is 2%, then raise their salary by 2%. Keep doing it that way, then you have indexed their salary to inflation, and they're not going to complain or feel anything, no matter how much inflation will go. Now, I understand some of the concerns of the government. Say if they're going to pay minimum wage, they will have to spend more money or print more money. They don't really have to do that. The amount of money in circulation, they can reallocate government spending, reallocate priorities. They can cut some wasteful spending, move some monies from some areas that are less productive to areas that are more productive. And that way, they would still be able to raise minimum wage without having to print extra money.
Is the gap in earnings between civil servants and politicians in UK, for instance, is it vast in terms of the difference compared to what obtains in Nigeria?
Except a politician is doing a business in the UK, I know not of any politician whose income, just parliamentary income for being a politician, apart from writing books or getting revenue, no politician is among the top 10 earners in the country. None.
How do you mean, Doctor? Who are the top 10 earners? I mean, give me just 2 or 3.
So the top 10 earners, they are private workers, some of them business owners, CEOs, and some of them high-level government corporation executive CEOs, investment bankers, I would say, they're among the top earners. Maybe medical doctors that have been practicing for many years and they have progressed so high in their profession, they earn far more than the politicians. And even some primary school teachers, and I think primary school teachers and secondary school teachers that have accumulated lots of years of experience, I think a lot of them earn more than some politicians.
I don't know, maybe you've been there for a very long time. This question may sound strange to you. If I say, who disconfigured our, the parameters that we use in paying for productivity in Nigeria? Is it the military or the politicians when they took over in 1999?
Well, it's a big question, and these debates, they have dominated the Nigerian media, always putting the blame on our leaders. But if the problem was 100% our leaders, then our first set of leaders would have come and gone with the problem, and the problem would have finished. Because we've been having leaders from 1966, right? So the leaders are drawn from among the people, and the people do the hatchet job for the leaders. No single leader gets himself into power. He's voted by millions and millions of people. So those millions and millions of people, I don't believe they were hypnotized. Maybe they followed their consciences in court, or they were bowing to the greed of money and materialism, or the corruption that has been lingering out there. But we had opportunity as a country to use our oil proceeds to build our non-oil sector, but that opportunity is gone. And it's very, very difficult. It's practically impossible to get that, because at the time we have the opportunity, if you divide Nigeria's oil revenue output by the population, it's far bigger, or maybe 10 times than the same thing if you do it now. So population has grown much faster, and the national output in terms, national revenue in terms of oil has not kept pace. So we can be argued to say we've suffered from the three big problems of the resource curse, because you see the resource curse is used to describe the failure of Nigeria's economic progress and other resource-rich countries, and it's a three-pronged problem. One, it comes with erosion of governance. So when a country discovers oil and institutions are not built, then it becomes difficult to build institutions. And those who would benefit from the proceeds of corruption are unfortunately with the mandate to build an institution. So if they build an institution, they are kicking themselves out of business, and they would never want to do that. So that's the aspect of resource cost, and the quest for money becomes the biggest motivation for running for political office. Then the second is the Dutch disease aspect, which means when there is so much oil income for the government from sale of crude oil, the government starts spending the money into the economy, and this spending will migrate people from rural areas to cities and towns, because construction, services, restaurants, all these businesses are booming. And the labor that you need to produce food in the rural area, they have moved out. And you start having the tradable sectors, which is called the agricultural sectors and the manufacturing sectors, running shortage of labor, and they start shrinking, and then you see them affecting output. And the third aspect is volatility, which means very unstable. Over many decades, you see Nigeria feeling the economic hit whenever there is crash in world oil price. And Nigeria cannot do anything about oil price because we produce just 2% of the global oil output, so we don't have leverage over oil price. So our economy is not fully insulated from the ups and downs of the international oil market.
Now, the government if you look at it critically, is deliberately moving towards compressed natural gas, CNG, and also electricity. They are talking about importing electric vehicles, CNG buses, to replace gasoline. Do you think it's a step in the right direction? And will it bring down inflation, cost of living, and all that?
Cost of energy transition is massive. Globally, it's over $1 trillion to transit to net zero. Even developed countries with 20 times more GDP than Nigeria, they are still pushing back their net zero targets because of the huge financial commitment. The Nigerian economy, for me, is not yet ready to just rush into net zero transition because we don't have the infrastructure yet. Do we have infrastructure across the country to charge electronic vehicles? Even if we have, do we have enough energy to supply for these charging points, the infrastructure? So these are kind of the questions to ask. So we don't contribute much to the global net zero as developing countries. Much of that comes from heavily industrial countries. We don't contribute much to that. So let the rest of the world rush to net zero and we would follow them behind gradually. I think I've missed your audio.
Welcome back, and we apologize for the glitch. Doctor, maybe a last question. What is the way forward now for Nigeria in terms of getting the economy right?
This is a very, very big question. And I will first start by saying I don't have the answer. Yeah, I don't have the answer, but that doesn't mean we fold our arms. There's still something that can be done, right? So, like on a general note, you need the combination of two things. I'll call them the sufficient condition, the necessary condition, and the sufficient condition.
And I want you to summarize them because we have less than 1 minute to go. Yes, summarize.
Oh, okay, so the sufficient condition is that you staff the presidency think tank with experts, the necessary condition, those who can analyze data and advise based on what the data tells them. And second, you need the leaders to obey and keep politics out of economic policy making.
All right, Dr. Dapel, I have to stop you here, but hoping to have you some other time because we have run out of time. Thank you for joining us.
Pleased to meet you. Have a wonderful evening, Hamza.
All right, because that was Dr. Zuhumnan Dapel, a researcher and economist based in the United Kingdom, who helped us analyze the problems with the Nigerian economy. And that's a wrap on today's package. We sincerely hope you found the conversation engaging and informative. And be sure to join Daily Politics Live, airing every weekday on our special package on Friday, during which we open the telephone line for you to comment on national issues. For now, bye-bye from here. I am Hamza Idris.